Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to start this PDW, this proposal development workshop. The topic today is collaboration in all its many forms. The context here is proposal development and collaboration, and that might be a short-term or long-term. We'll kind of get into that probably in the discussion. But I've asked 4 wonderful faculty members to join us today to talk about their experience with collaboration in the proposal context, with very different experiences, lived experience, and then disciplinary experience. So we have a wide gamut of experience today, and I'm just thrilled to death. So first and foremost, let me thank you very much for joining. And then we're going to go in the order that a preceded order, which is Dr. Nicole Thompson, Dr. Gary Moore, Dr. Diana Bowman, and then Dr. Raghu Santanam. And I've asked each of them to introduce themselves in sequence, and they will pass it in that order. And so I'm just going to go off video, and you guys are going to have to take it away. So today will be recorded. At the end of the remarks, we'll save for questions, and then we'll also we'll take it off recording and see if we can have a more open discussion around collaboration. So thank you very much, and take it away, Dr. Thompson.
Good morning. I'm Nicole Thompson. I am the Vice Dean for Teacher Preparation at Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, as well as a professor in the Division of Teacher Preparation. We have a lot of different types of partnerships and collaborations within Teachers College. I help lead our partnership space with our local district partners that we collaborate with to have our students in internships and residencies. We place probably 2,500 students each semester, so partnership looks different in the local context. We also have organizational partners with different educational entities in companies across the US, thinking about how we move forward in collaboration to achieve greater things together for education, and have collaborations primarily through USAID funded projects with other foreign governments and universities and colleagues. So we have a lot of opportunity for engagement, and with proposal development in all of these spaces, it's a fine line, a delicate dance, if you will, for getting the right pieces and people in place. I think the big thing is to go in with the idea of collaboration and knowing that you bring, or we bring, something unique to the table in the education context, but so do the people that we're working with. And we're all working towards similar goals and ideas for success for whoever we're working towards. So in most cases, it's the children in school classrooms and trying to figure out how our outcomes and our work goes forward. So when I think about the span of partnership or how long it takes for an effective one to develop, it really goes kind of beyond proposal work. Our district school partnerships, we've had the luxury of very positive engagement for a long period of time, and they continue to evolve and sort of move at the speed of trust. And so in our innovative approaches to education, we've been asking our partners to think about things differently with us for how we serve learners and communities. And so different partners have different understandings and different needs. And so we have to go along at a pace that's comfortable for the partner. In the USAID oriented partnership work, there's a different pace that comes along, because you have to develop the proposal really very quickly. And then you sort of hurry up and wait while it's submitted for review and feedback. And then you get something, and then you have to do something else very quickly and respond back and forth before you get to the actual, oh my gosh, I won the proposal. Now I guess the harder work, or the funner work, if you will, comes into play. And so being open and willing to engage in different paces of work can be a bit of a challenge. The proposal process can be all consuming for 2 or 3 weeks. And then it just, you're submitted, and you just have to hurry up and wait. and then it could be also, another level happens and continue again. So it's moving along in a space that you have to be a little bit comfortable with some ambiguity in all of that, and then flexible when the responses come back in. I think it's exciting, though. I know we're working on a project in Morocco. So we have been working with 24 institutions, 12 universities, and their related teacher training centers with about 300 Moroccan faculty. And truly, I can tell you what we wrote in that proposal has come to life. We have really, we shared an idea around collaboration and how we could lock arms with our colleagues in their institutions to think about how we enhance and help evolve teacher preparation in their context. And it has been very rewarding to maintain the emphasis and focus on collaboration, even working in a different space. It's been very important to understand culture and context, and knowing that the context in other places is very different. So bringing that into your work and being flexible has really been probably the hallmark of what we've done, because we have pivoted. That project started right before the COVID pandemic launched, I guess, if you will, and we had to shift everything to a technology-based set of interactions because we didn't have a grace period. We had to keep moving forward. So understanding culture and context is huge. And then I think my last thing to say about really being successful in a potential collaboration from proposal development in through implementation is being open to other ideas. We've done things the way we've done things because they've worked for us, but thinking about situations in other places, other communities, other countries, they may need a different approach. And because we do have a discrete set of knowledge and expertise to share, that's why we're sought out. But we also have to be really open to understanding and recognizing and valuing local knowledge, and how that has an impact in both proposal development and then subsequent implementation and relationship building. Because even in those contexts that are different culturally or contextually than ours, it's still the speed of trust. And it has to go along, at least in my opinion, in the work that we've done in a very collaborative space. So I will stop now and pass it off to Gary and go from there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Moore. I'm an associate professor in the School of Molecular Sciences. I'm a chemist, and my research interest is in areas of sustainable chemistry and photochemistry. I moved to ASU in 2014. I was at a national laboratory before that at Berkeley National Lab. And during my time there at Berkeley, I was also involved with large collaborative efforts. One of these was the Joint Center for Artificial Photosynthesis. It was a collaboration between Caltech and Berkeley as the lead partners on it. And it involved exercises and team building for sure, especially partnering across large institutions that are separated both in space. But it was a fun project to learn to work with others on science-focused missions. And in moving to ASU, this past year, I've had a collaborative effort with folks at Berkeley that involved a switch in my role. So moving from an employee at Berkeley Lab to a partner on funding agencies. And this one was outside my areas of usual involvement in sponsored projects, that it wasn't necessarily a science program or a chemistry program, but that one was more based on outreach efforts. And it came through building organic relationships. Someone who I had known at the National Lab had reached out to me, and it wasn't that they had a particular funding agency in mind or a sponsor call, but they had an idea of building relationships between ASU and Berkeley that would help facilitate participation of Native American students from ASU in pursuing careers in STEM. And so with that idea, we started to just think of things we could develop, exchange programs, summer research opportunities, faculty mentorship programs. And once we had those ideas in mind, we started to think of agencies that might be interested in sponsoring things like that. And one of them was the Sloan Foundation. So we had contacted the Sloan Foundation, and they had a program that these themes seemed to match on to. And once we initiated those conversations, it came clear to us we really needed partners beyond just the science aspect of things, people who really had their chops in developing outreach programs and working with students. And so we found lovely colleagues at Berkeley Labs that my partner Trent had already known, that included Lala Cote and Colette Flood. And they've had years and years in experience in that area. So it was a very nice partnership to participate in so far. We're just getting started with our first summer in developing an outreach program for that. And we're kicking that off this year. And we hope everything goes as smooth and successful as possible. The other thing I can talk about today is just experience across sponsor agencies, including philanthropic societies like the Sloan Foundation, but how they may differ or have similarities with other funding agencies. And I guess first I can talk about the similarities, and that is, I think finding the right sponsorship for a program is incredibly important. That they're just as much stakeholders in the projects as those involved doing the work or doing the science. And so finding the right match, I think, can be incredibly important to a project being successful. In terms of differences, that's also, I think, incredibly important, understanding what the needs of the organization are. For example, when I think of the Department of Energy, I think of something that's very mission specific. So being sure that the project goals are well aligned with the mission of the funding agency, I think is incredibly important. Another topic that Faye asked if I would address is, are there ways in which students, postdocs, or early career faculty members can practice their collaboration approaches? And I've discovered since arriving at ASU just a wonderful organization called Scalog, SCALOG, and they encourage partnerships and building between junior faculty in particular. The topics tend to be fairly focused and sub disciplines, but they're very good at inviting teams of people from across different universities, different institutes, and setting up a series of conversations over the weekend, workshops, breakout sessions that really let you get to know each other, both personally, but also in terms of the science that you're interested in and the skill sets that you bring. And as part of this effort, they allow a team building workshop where you can partner with colleagues that you've met during this weekend experience and write a short proposal that you pitch at the end of the week. And if the agencies that are present find interested in that, and you can send a short 1 to 2 page write-up, and they'll fund something like this on the spot at a seed level for 1 year. And it's a great way of just meeting others outside your typical network from a conference. And I find that a really, really helpful organization in that context. Also internally at ASU, there's a number of, I think, organizations that look to put together collaborative efforts. And it's one area that I've always been impressed with at ASU is how open people are in general to collaborative ideas. I think that's all I have to say on the topic for now, and I'll pass it along. I look forward to talking more during the open discussion.
I guess that means I'm up. Good morning, everybody. I'm Di Bowman. I'm the Associate Dean for Applied Research and Partnerships here in the College of Law. I also hold a position in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society in Global Futures, and I have a partial secondment to the University Technology Office this year, where I am a Faculty Innovation Fellow with that team. So as you can imagine, even by that introduction, I'm very cross-disciplinary by nature. I arrived at ASU in 2015. Prior to that, I have lived and worked in Belgium, the United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, and Australia is home for me. So when I think about collaborations, I have amazing colleagues here across ASU, and it's been great to listen to two of them already. But a lot of the collaborations that I do are actually the cross-jurisdictional collaborations. I have worked extensively with the World Economic Forum, the OECD, the European Parliament, and then governments and police forces all across sub-Saharan Africa. So for me, I think it's a really interesting area to build collaborations. It touches on the point that Nicole mentioned in terms of the cross-cultural dimensions that you need to bring into it, working across different time zones as well. Working on a program in Oman at the moment, which is 11 hours ahead of us. So trying to schedule those phone calls, and it's quite challenging. Usually I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I've discovered. I commute back and forth to Oman at this point in time. One of the things I love about ASU in comparison to a lot of other universities I've been at is there is a real push and desire to actually build collaboration internally across these different units. On any given day, by virtue of my position and my own program of work, I'm probably in contact with 10 different colleges, and people really are excited when you reach out. One of the things I did when I moved to ASU, and I think this is why I'm very privileged to be invited to be on different grants, whether it's engineering or from nursing, is I took the first year of my time here at ASU and literally just went around different units and introduced myself. I drank a lot of coffee. I had a lot of lunches. But the idea was for me to understand what was going on in the university ecosystem. And there was no agenda on my part. I was just curious in terms of what people were doing. And then over time, those relationships have become friendships. And as people have needs in terms of somebody from the law school or a policy angle, they kind of know to reach out to me. And if it's not my area per se, I will find somebody in the college. And then I do that in reverse as well. I was sending out emails yesterday in regards to a DoD proposal that we might have an opportunity to work on. I reached out to global security initially, and then started to go down the list to build the best team. And so I really love doing that. I think I am a matchmaker when it comes to actually building teams, and it's a really enjoyable part of this job. One of the things I did when I moved to ASU, thinking about how long does it take to build partnerships, is at the OECD, there was a working party on emerging technologies. I knew of it, I hadn't worked with them, but when I came in with SFIS, and my area is the governance of emerging technologies, I told my then director that I was flying to Paris in order to go and meet them. And my agenda was to make ASU the go-to university in terms of this working group. So literally, Dave Guston, to his credit, allowed me that trip to Paris. I went in, and for 2 days, we kind of mapped out the different agendas that SFIS had, the law school, and what the working party was trying to do. And it was on that second day over coffee in the basement cafeteria that we came up with the idea of doing something around the governance of neurotech. So I took that back to ASU and wrote an NSF proposal in partnership with my colleagues across the two schools and the OECD team. We were funded for a workshop. We did it in partnership with the National Academies in DC. And really on literally the cost of me flying to Paris and a couple of days in terms of pulling together this proposal, we ended up with a phenomenal 2-day workshop in DC and a number of publication and subsequent funding opportunities that came out of it. A lot of people laughed at me when I said, I'm going to make this happen. And it literally was just being there in person, being willing to get to know them and their research agenda, and then just work out where the synergies were. Another partnership I can speak to in terms of duration in time is I work very closely with the Phoenix Children's Hospital, our athletics team, and also the nursing school in terms of a program of work that is designed to reduce the incidence of drowning of 1 to 4-year-olds in backyard swimming pools and spas. We have the second highest fatality rate in the country. And if we can't do anything about it in our backyard, I question who can. When I started that program of work, Coach Bob Bowman, who is the ASU swim coach, who's also Michael Phelps's personal coach, I reached out to him and asked if he would literally be my poster person in order to actually get interest. I said at the time, and my dean at the time, Doug Sylvester, I said to him, I will get the Michael Phelps Foundation on board with this, given that Michael has been swimming at ASU since 2015. He lives in Scottsdale, and he's the world's greatest swimmer. And so it took 4 years for us to do the PSA, to build a brand, to get traction with Phoenix Children's Hospital. SRP came in and then started to fund the project. We ran our initial data set. We had statistically significant results. And at that point in time, I felt that I had the credibility to reach out to the Michael Phelps Foundation. Did so again through Bob Bowman. And I sent the email at 11 a.m. that morning asking if it was okay if I approached the Michael Phelps Foundation. It was the most nervous day of my life as I'm sitting here waiting to see if it's a yes or a no. And at 1 p.m., Bob sent back an email saying, I've just forwarded this on to Michael himself. It went to the Phelps Foundation board. It was approved in terms of the partnership. And then we moved really quickly to do a launch in May. We had, when the press release went out, I've got to say, as a law faculty member, I never thought I'd have a press release that was Di Bowman, Michael Phelps, Coach Bob Bowman in it. It got over 114 million hits, and Michael spoke to the program of work during his Olympic commentating, which has then given us a lot more credibility to move forward with the American Academy of Pediatrics, which at the end of the day, my goal is to influence policy at a national level, and I need all of these partners to do it. So that's a really fun passion project that really has brought together the leading people in our backyard and is making a difference. Just looking at one of the other questions, is there an attitude or persona that seems to enhance participation? I think being authentic is really key. I also think putting in the time to actually build relationships. I never think about collaborations in a transactional sense. I like to work with my friends. And so I build teams that I know I like the people, I know their skill sets, I know we're going to work together. And that takes time. And that's why I'm really glad I invested that first year of my time here at ASU to do that. Because when I was thinking of the email I sent about the DoD, these are all my friends who I love working with. So being authentic, I think being transparent in terms of what the collaboration is going to look like, who is going to be the lead, and always being willing to revisit that. So that openness is really important. And I think just being a good partner, if you're going to say you're going to do something, do it. And if something comes in the way, and trust us, in the last 3 years, we know this more so than anything, just let people know. So that communication skills is really important as well. So I think I've taken up enough time. I will hand over to our fourth faculty member. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Raghu Santhanam. I'm from the WP Carey School of Business. I've been here in ASU 25 years. I'm currently Senior Associate Dean in the WP Carey School, overseeing executive education, corporate partnerships, and lifelong learning. In terms of my research, I predominantly have worked in healthcare informatics. Digital platforms is another area that I have focused on quite a bit, and as well as AI and augmented intelligence related topics as it applies to business contexts. In terms of consulting, coming from the business school, not only do we do academic research, we do have the opportunity to sometimes work with external organizations, corporations on projects that are probably more consulting rather than pure research projects. But even in those contexts, being able to convert that into academic publications, or at least case studies that we can utilize in our graduate programs. So those have included Intel, IBM, Lallemand, which is a yeast manufacturing company. In fact, we have another project just starting with them in the next month or so. And when I was a PhD student, in fact, I did an internship with Lucent just to understand how they were doing their sales processes, and then that was connected with my dissertation. So that's on one side of how you work with businesses. Very different from any sort of academic research projects that you may have ever engaged in, but they're really enriching in terms of what it brings to your experiences and what you can take to the classroom as well. Also worked on a number of research projects that are, of course, more sponsored projects from agencies, includes Department of Public Health here locally, and part of that funding came from CDC. Obviously that's related to public health. But I worked with, there was one project which was funded by the European Union and included 15 different universities in EU. And we had the opportunity to be the US collaborator on that project. So that was a fascinating one. Also worked with US Army, and currently working, there's a Department of Labor funded project on Workforce Accelerator Partnership, which I think is really collaboration on steroids. I mean, there's just a huge number of collaborators, both corporations as well as nonprofits that are involved in it. So that's something that I'm in the middle of. We are in the second year of that project. That's between two different grants that were funded. It's about $10 million over 4 years. So that's really keeping us busy. But essentially, my role as a senior associate dean, on any typical day or week, I probably have at least a half a dozen companies that I'm talking to, or starting a collaboration or moving a collaboration. So this is just almost become a part of my life, and somehow along with that, you do also look for time for doing your academic research. So it is fun. It's been a fun journey, and I wanted to just address a couple of things that Faye had asked us to comment on, and then of course I'll open it up for questions and comments. So one of the questions was about the difference between working on research proposals versus collaborating on co-authored research publications. I think for the most part, I haven't seen it to be very different, but there are some subtle differences that I have noticed. One is, when we are on these sort of collaborative research proposals, it is much more institutional collaboration versus individual collaborations. So that changes the nature of conversation you're having with your collaborators, because with academic papers, you're essentially just focusing on, all right, so individually, what are we going for? What's our research objectives and so on? Whereas when you're working on proposals that are towards grant agencies, then you're also considering what are those institutional constraints, or what are the institutional goals between the two entities, and how do we bring all of that together? So that, I think, is a key difference. In terms of looking for specific partners, I think in academic collaborations, we look for specific expertise or elements of that academic research where you need someone specific to address a gap. Whereas in some cases of, I think we do that essentially the same way in grant proposals, but there's one subtle difference. So sometimes you do look for collaborators for their CVs or experiences that strengthens your proposal. So that I think is a subtle difference, but it is an important one that I think you need to consider. And what happens with proposals is, given that they are future looking, the collaboration goals and expectations are less clear. Whereas when you go for academic authorship, it's immediate, you know exactly what needs to be done. You probably even have identified your data collection strategy and all of that. So those collaborations are probably either going to happen or not happen very quickly. So I think you know what's going to happen with those. But in both cases, you're looking for those who are collaborative. So that's something that you have to evaluate. And I think, over time you learn that. And along the ways, you may make mistakes, or you may have judgments that didn't pan out the way you thought, but that's all part of the learning process. So, I mean, I know it sometimes can be frustrating, but it's part of that learning process. You're learning, you're absorbing those experiences. So that's where I think patience and optimism are, I think, critical for you to think about whether it's academic collaborations or research grant collaborations. think about those two attributes as something that you bring to the table when you work on these different projects. Another question that Faye had was about, is there an attitude or persona that seems to enhance the potential for successful collaborations? And I think I want to divide that between how you approach it as a junior faculty. I was reflecting on what I was doing about 25 years back to what I do today and how I approach projects now. I think when I was a junior faculty, my approach was more of an aspirational attitude. That is, every project that I was getting into, I asked myself, why am I doing it if it is not going to have an immediate impact? And there's quite a few projects that didn't have an immediate impact on my career. But the way I looked at it is, okay, this is going to build something in me that helps me in the future. So it's an investment that I'm making for the future. So that sort of an aspirational attitude actually helped me get involved in projects that otherwise, if I was very focused on my tenure and I need to get my tenure, this is what I need to do, I probably wouldn't have engaged in those. So maybe I had a little bit of luxury in doing that, given where I was in my early parts of my career, but still I think that is an important element of how I approach collaborations early on when I was a junior faculty. And if it did turn out to be good, then it helped build my CV. Now that helps you as a senior faculty when you have done those and you have those experiences. And ultimately you build new connections. Sitting in your office, working as junior faculty, seldom you meet people outside of the academic institutions. But when you engage in these projects, especially given I come from the business school, those connections matter. And those connections and experiences actually help you to develop as a professional within your own discipline. So this is where I think when you are a junior faculty and you look at new problem domains or new collaboration opportunities, there is this trade-off. I don't say it's trade-off, but it's a portfolio of one is about exploitation, which is where you have certain expertise that can be useful in other contexts. So you're exploiting your own strengths in new projects in those collaborations. So that's one approach to taking to collaboration. The second is exploration, right? So which is you don't have something in your portfolio, but by engaging in a research project or in a grant proposal or a new collaboration, you're able to get to a new area along with someone who is an expert in those areas. So it allows you to explore and branch out in your own professional career. So I think essentially as a junior faculty, when you look at collaborations, you're looking to balance that exploitation and exploration. And you're the best judge on choosing what % of your portfolio is going to be in that exploitative versus explorative mode. And as I move to more of a senior faculty role, I think I've taken a more of a contribution mindset. As you remember, I said as a junior faculty, I was more of an aspirational attitude that I was bringing to collaborations. But now I look at myself as, okay, so what am I contributing? How can I bring my strength to a proposal that makes it stronger? How can I bring myself into an academic collaboration that strengthens the paper? So in this, and even if you're a junior faculty, I strongly recommend that you read this book by Adam Grant. He's a Wharton professor in business, and the book's title is Give and Take. Very, very simple title. And the point of that Give and Take book is that each one of us approaches our collaborations. In some cases, we're trying to take something from there. We are a taker. In some cases, we are a giver, right? And if you always are giving, you're going to hurt yourself. And you're always taking, eventually that's going to come back to bite you, right? So it is important for you to quickly think about what your interactions are, what your collaborations are, and are you doing the right thing in terms of that give and take. So it's just a very nicely written book, and I think it captures the essence of what collaborations mean for an individual as a collaborator. And I think as a senior faculty, have taken more of a growth mindset that if you're involving in something and you're contributing to something, even if it means that maybe there is not a lot of gain for your department, for your unit, for the institution, there may be something in the future that you could utilize that for. So that sort of an approach to always thinking about what is that growth mindset here? How can we, enlarge the pie rather than thinking that you're only getting a portion of it. And ultimately, I think as a senior faculty would also consider that contribution to the institutional mission. ASU is mission driven, and the charter is something that you're always considering as your top priority or the true north. And you approach those collaborations from that perspective, those collaborations tend to be successful. So I'm going to stop there, but I think this is as good a time for us to engage the audience. And if there are questions, comments, welcome that.
Okay, so for a presentation with no slides, one of my favorites. This has been fantastic, and I truly appreciate all of the insights. I was quickly taking notes in the chat just to make sure that I captured some of it so that I could kind of maybe figure out a blog post later. But truly a fantastic, wide-ranging perspective in this panel, and I knew it was going to be good. I didn't know it was going to be this good. So thank you. That being said, I'm going to take off the recording and capture some of the discussion, and I'll take you off of Spotlight, but I want to capture in the recording my appreciation and thanks to your generous gift of time today. It is truly representative of what ASU has to bring in terms of a deep bench of positive and authentic people. So thank you. And